So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar dedicated to the presentation of Mafia-Jihad, an intersectional study on juvenile trajectories and new models for security policies on the prevention and countering of terrorism and radicalization. And it's a pleasure to open this event on behalf of the Siracusa International Institute for Criminal Justice and Human Rights, which has had the honor to coordinate this important research together with Cecilia Polizzi, CEO of Next Wave Center, and with the support of the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, and its specific unit for analysis, policy planning, and statistics. Just a very brief introduction to the Siracusa International Institute for those who are not familiar with our institute and our work. The Siracusa International Institute is an international non-for-profit foundation registered in Italy, dedicated to education, training, and research in the fields of international and comparative criminal justice and human rights. The main objective of the Siracusa International Institute is to contribute to international peace and security through the effective implementation of criminal law and criminal justice, and to promote the rule of law and the protection of human rights in criminal justice systems worldwide. It's recognized by the Italian President of the Republic, and it works in close cooperation with the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Justice at the national level, while it also enjoys consultative status with the United Nations and participatory status with the Council of Europe. The Institute, in its over 50 years of activities, has organized over 800 conferences, training and educational seminars and meetings of experts, attended by over 67,000 justice sector actors from all over the world. The study that we will be presenting today explores one of the most pressing security challenges of our times, the convergence between organized crime and violent extremism, and the ways in which both phenomena can shape and exploit the lives of young people. Across different regions, we are witnessing how criminal and extremist groups use similar mechanisms of influence, belonging, and control, often within family networks, to transmit values of violence and defiance of law. One of the features that we believe makes this publication particularly relevant is forward-looking approach. It calls for an integrated evidence-based strategies that combine prevention, protection, and rehabilitation, while always, though, keeping human rights and the rule of law at the center. Before leaving the floor to our distinguished guests, I would like to only briefly introduce them. So, Cecilia Polizzi is a leading figure in the counter-terrorism and counter-extremism community, serving as a guiding force in policy discussions and in the development of strategies addressing the involvement of minors in terrorism across both the public and private sector. Throughout her career, she has collaborated extensively with a number of national governments and multilateral organizations such as NATO, OSCE, the Council of Europe, and the European Commission, also addressing the United Institute Study for Peace, the Italian Ministry of Defense, and other high-level institutions as an expert. Her research has been published in several academic journals and outlets, and has informed the 2020 annual report on terrorism and human rights of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, as well as the OSCE resolution on preventing youth radicalization to violent extremism and terrorism through education, media, and information literacy. Cecilia is also the founder and CEO of the Next Wave Center, which is a leading organization in the area of child involvement with terrorists and violent extremist actors, and became global leader of 2025, and as I mentioned last but not least, the principal investigator and coordinator of this project. We also have the pleasure of having Professor Dean Alexander, who is the director of the Homeland Security Research Program and a tenured full professor at the School of Law Enforcement and Justice Administration at Western Illinois University. Professor Alexander's teaching, research, and speaking activities encompass terrorism, security, and legal issues. Professor Alexander has lectured on counterterrorism issues to law enforcement and military personnel in the United States and abroad. And in addition to publishing numerous peer-reviewed publications, he's authored a number of books on terrorism, including Family Terror Networks, the Islamic State Combating the Caliphate Without Borders, and Terrorism and Business, the Impact of September 11, 2001. Dear Cecilia, dear Professor Alexander, dear Dean, if I may, thank you both for being here today, and with pleasure, I leave the floor to Cecilia to start her presentation.
Thank you very much, Filippo. I am really pleased to be with you today to present the outcomes of this year of work. And I would like to begin by extending my gratitude to the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as to the Siracusa Institute for partnering with the Next Wave Center on this initiative. Over the last few years, we have witnessed the rising prominence of children and young people in counterterrorism cases, and the mobilization of minors into extremist circles, often across ideological lines, has consistently, in fact, emerged as a dimension of the current threat scenario. Now, one of the trends of the ecosystems of youth radicalization that we currently noticed is represented by family units acting as conduit in the transmission of violent ideology to their children. These dynamics, as perhaps our attendees know, have first come to the forefront during the Syrian crisis, as we witnessed thousands of minors traveling alone or with family members entering conflict zones in Syria and Iraq with an intent to join ISIS and other insurgent groups. However, family influence and its impact on youth trajectories are not exclusive to terrorism or to a particular ideological orientation within extremism threats, and similar patterns may be in fact observed in other forms of organized violence. And therefore it is against this broader backdrop that the Mafia Jihad project was conceived. Through this initiative, we aimed to achieve two primary objectives. First, to explore how the dynamics of family influence in mafia context parallel those in extremist environments. And second, to examine how lessons learned from protecting children in mafia environment can in fact inform innovative strategies to prevent youth radicalization. And in this sense, we leveraged Italy's extensive experience in combating the mafia, and we effectively sought to address the emerging challenges posed by terrorism and extremism, as well as to contribute to the design of pioneering methodologies in public security through a multidisciplinary intersectoral approach grounded, as you were mentioning before, on the rule of law. Why to examine the mafia context to understand the youth radicalization, one might ask? And the answer lies in recognizing that notwithstanding differences in the structure of child socialization process, which are typically more defined in organized crime context, the nature of ideological typologies, as well as whether the parental role functions as a direct or casual link in shaping the child's trajectory, or conversely as a trigger for reaction against the family environment itself, family influence operates through strikingly similar mechanisms in both contexts. Based on our analysis, several key findings emerged. First of all, that pedagogy and families in both mafia and terrorist and extremist contexts transmit an ideological oriented set of values and behavioral norms to their children, leveraging in fact trust and interdependence to shape children's identity and identity formation processes. Secondly, that the children within these ecosystems may be instrumentalized and mobilized as strategic assets, undermining in fact their healthy development and well-being and leading to a systematic violation of their rights. In both mafia and extremist context, we also found that the family itself is instrumentalized toward criminal or terrorism purposes. Families, in fact, provide cohesion, secrecy, and a higher degree of operational efficiency that allows them to serve not only as a privileged environment for the socialization of children, but also as a structure that may facilitate child recruitment and their co-optation in perpetrating crime or terror and terrorism-related offenses. What we found also is that even in ideologically saturated environments, we encounter inflection points that may strengthen resilience or provide opportunities for intervention. However, at the same time, protective factors remain strictly context-dependent and are not guaranteed due to their dependency to the specific circumstances of both the child and the family environment. And this particular finding, of course, underscored the importance of nuanced and individualized assessments and approaches rather than blanket solutions that are based solely on family affiliation. Lastly, lessons learned from the Italian protection model of children born in mafia-influenced environment has the potential to inform a prevention of child radicalization within the family unit. And I think that it's very important to underline that Italy's experience shows that early child-centered and non-punitive interventions in organized crime family context can in fact halt the transmission of deviant ideology, disrupt the cycles of violence, improve children's social and educational outcome, as well as offering a really practical model that is adaptable and therefore transferable to preventing youth radicalization across a different organized violence domain, which is, of course, terrorism and violent extremism. And ultimately, the Mafia Jihad project has highlighted that the convergence between organized crime and terrorism goes very well beyond the parameters so far highlighted by the existing literature pertaining to crime-terrorism nexus, to encompass, in fact, also, as we demonstrated, the instrumentalization of both the family units as well as children themselves as means to advance crime or terrorism-related objectives. And I believe that this understanding opens new avenues for the development of targeted prevention and intervention efforts. And I'd like at this point to highlight three main takeaways. First of all, that family and intra-family dynamics exert a profound influence on youth trajectories, shape pathways or have the capacity to shape pathways towards both criminality and extremism. An effective prevention in this sense demands a comprehensive and context-sensitive approach that, while of course accounting for the family unit, also enables interventions that are tailored to the specific social and psychological contours and experiences of each child. Secondly, that Italy's extensive experience in combating the mafia and other forms of organized crime offers crucial insights into the socialization of children within criminal milieus, and they provide a tested framework for developing holistic approaches to preventing child radicalization. And third, that addressing the involvement of minors in terrorism and violent extremism demands a comprehensive, cohesive, coordinated, sustainable national strategies grounded in the rule of law, human and child rights, as fragmented approaches are insufficient for confronting what has become a structural rather than an episodic threat. And lastly, that the intergenerational transmission of violent ideology within the family unit is not inevitable, but requires appropriate attention, frameworks, and resources to ensure children's safety and global security. And I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, for this introduction to the research and the program that together we have developed. Just one thing before leaving the floor to Professor Alexander, I would like to, of course, our participants are more than welcome to start preparing any kind of questions that they may have. They can address them within the webinar, and we will be happy to share them with our two guests. And also allow me to remind you that the publication is, of course, available online, both at the website of the Siracusa International Institute, both in English or Italian, but also on the website of Next Wave. So once again, thank you very much, Cecilia, for this introduction. Professor Alexander, I would also now like to leave the floor for you for some thoughts you might want to share, generally speaking, on the work that we conducted, but giving also maybe a more deep perspective. If I understand correctly, you have a presentation. I will be happy to now put it online for all our participants.
Thank you.
Just 1 second. You should see it. Please confirm.
Okay. Yep. Okay, great.
Sorry, it's gone just the wrong way.
It's all right.
Yeah, and I'll just start it from, okay, please.
All right, perfect. All right, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share some perspectives on family terror networks and commentary on this cutting edge report, 2025 Mafia Jihad study. I want to thank the organizers of this event, and again, it's an important opportunity to share some perspectives on this topic. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of what we're going to be discussing, a quick introduction on family terror networks, some case studies, some characteristics of family terror networks, some stats from a book I authored on family terror networks, came out in 2019, a model on a path toward family terror networks development within a family, and family terror networks 2.0, the January 6th siege, in 2021, should be instead of 2001, future of family terror networks, and then insights on the study, the Mafia Jihad study. Next slide. So again, this is the cover of the book I published 2019. If anyone's interested, they can send me an email and I'll send a PDF of the book. Next slide, please. So family terror networks are essentially families that attempt or participate in terrorist activity, can be connected through blood or through marriage or through adoption. So it's one of various social networks, online and offline, their influences, which we'll see in a bit. Next slide. So as you may know, that 19 hijackers on 9/11, interestingly enough, you had two sets of brothers on 9/11, as well as 3 cousins. So of the 19 hijackers, you had 7 that were connected by family, including 2 sets of brothers. Next slide, please. A well-known case in France was the Kouachi brothers, who conducted an attack jointly on Charlie Hebdo. Next slide, please. Another instance are 2 suicide bombers, again, brothers, conducted an attack, one at a subway in Brussels and the other in conjunction with other individuals, conducted an attack at Brussels airport. Next. Here's a case of individual from Australia. He and his wife brought 5 kids. This is a picture of them in Raqqa, where bottom right, you have a child holding the decapitated head. Subsequently, reports that the father was killed in a drone strike, reports at 2 different times. At least one of the children was killed also in a drone strike, and some of the other kids were brought back, repatriated back to Australia. Next. It's another example of family terror networks. You had the brother Ahmed went on his own, left the UK, traveled to Syria, joined Islamic State. Then his 3 sisters, without the knowledge of their husbands, took their kids and went to Saudi Arabia and subsequently to Syria, where they were based in Syria. The oldest son, all the way on the left, Junaid Ahmed, was killed while fighting on behalf of ISIS. Next slide, please. Just one other point. Again, at that age, these kids have no autonomy. So if parents decide to take them to war zones, and have them participate in attacks. Again, the kids have no autonomy in that respect. Next slide. Other examples, depictions of spouses, widows of foreign fighters. Again, as was mentioned before, you had thousands of individuals brought with their parents to the war zone, Iraq and Syria. And subsequently, you have, once the husband was killed, the wife ended up marrying, in many cases, different ISIS fighters and then procreated, and you have multiple kids in that milieu. Next. It's an example of a family that embraced Islamic State tenets. The father blew himself up at one church. The mother took her two kids, blew herself with the kids up at another church, and then two brothers blew themselves up. Again, getting to the point where the kids have no autonomy. Again, the parents thought that they were assisting their kids to reach Jannah, and by conducting this attack. Next slide, please. Another example, family terror networks. Here we see, again, brothers. This case in the U.S., the Tsarnaev brothers undertook an attack at Boston Marathon. Next slide. This is an example, husband and wife conducted an attack San Bernardino. They actually met online, radicalized separately, but then through their marriage became more radical. Next. It's a different paradigm of ideation, principally sovereign citizen ideation. Jerry and Joe Kane. Jerry was the father during traffic stop in West Memphis, Arkansas. You had the son kill two police officers doing a traffic stop. Next slide, please. Another instance where the father influenced the son. The father was upset about the Branch Davidian interaction with the ATF, and he conducted bank robbery with his son where a security officer was killed. Ultimately, the father was sentenced to death and the son life in prison. So again, you have a different ideation in this respect, sort of militia, anti-government. Next slide, please. So some characteristics of family terror networks. It's global in nature. We've seen various examples of that. Every region of the world, unfortunately, has instances of that type of terrorism. The ideations are variant from religiously motivated to single issue, different types of anti-government and the like. You have disparate levels of participation by family members. Some are actually involved in undertaking attacks. Others are more on the planning phase. You have a variance of modus operandi that are utilized. We've seen in family terror networks, including different types of targets, the type of terrorist group that they're affiliated. So in some cases, it's an unaffiliated group, several individuals, some cases a formal group, others are networks. So again, you have a large variance within this broad paradigm of family terror networks. And next. We've also seen some examples of organized criminal syndicates involved that have some traits of family terror networks. In some cases, you have in family terror networks senior leadership, such as in bin Laden, Zawahiri, KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and his nephew Ramzi Youssef. So you have a lot of variance in terms of people, very important roles in formal terror groups versus as I said, unaffiliated. Some cases you have family members travel abroad, following other family members. Some cases, as I noted before, parents taking their kids to war zones with the perspective that they will be aiding their family members in that setting. Other examples, when you have a fallen member of a family, sometimes you have the wife or another spouse or kids or siblings conduct an attack. We've seen the exploitation of children, anywhere from sending kids to conduct attacks to various types of indoctrination. Next slide, please. Subsequent to an attack, in some cases you have support by family members for that type of attack, or in some cases you have condemnation. You've had various prosecutions of those that survive. You've had criminal prosecution in some cases, prosecuting for the same crime, sometimes different. Also, you've had civil suits against perpetrators in that arena as well. Some cases, upon capture, the terrorist discloses everything, some cases less so. You've had family members knowingly going out and getting killed, conducting an attack, in some cases being blown up while making explosives, or family members making explosives. While the role of patriarchs is predominant, you also have a role of matriarchs getting involved in type of terrorist activity. Next slide, please. Again, the family unit, as was mentioned, is an important setting by which individuals become radicalized as well as recruited into the extremist realm, or in this case, also organized criminal syndicate realm. The zeal by which one has, generally speaking, in a family unit is much more pervasive and aggressive than you have outside family unit. Within a family unit, also best practices can be shared. Also, there are opportunities for credibility if someone's trying to go outside the family unit, noting that a family member, or in some cases senior family members involved with terrorism, can be quite impactful for recruitment purposes. Next, please. Also, the family allows for various introductions. As some of you may know, Zawahiri's family member had a lawyer who was prominent, assisting with a jihadi at the time who was being prosecuted. So that you have that type of introduction or introductions. We have bin Laden, or with the case of KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and Ramzi Youssef. You had a guy named Murad who was introduced by Ramzi Youssef and pitched the idea of using planes as missiles. Capacity to de-radicalize is very difficult in a family setting. Subs as well, discovery is very difficult in a family setting, more so than otherwise. As I noted before, there's prevalence of examples of family terror networks, and it's a tool by some terror groups specifically to recruit as family units. Next, please. So this is from my 2019 book. I looked at 118 families and 138 occurrences of family relationships, and most predominant was husbands and wives. You can see there 31% brothers, about 26% fathers and sons, 11%. But then if you look at brothers and sisters, it's around 32%. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. If you look at the ideation, again, the ideation from the study that I looked at, the different cases, was predominantly jihadi. That was due to many factors in terms of the time I was doing the study. It was cross-sectional across the globe, and you had high predominance of jihadist activity. Also reporting of jihadist activities generally higher than otherwise, but we also have a variance of other types of ideations. Next slide, please. So also I put together a model in terms of sort of a pathway for this family terror networks. The initial family member needs to be radicalized, either online, offline. Then family member may approach other family members, but not always because of fear, but very often they do. The recipient of the proffer can accept or accept with reservations or reject. Next, please. Then the two family members may conduct an attack together, as we've seen with the Sarnai brothers or others, and then other family members may follow in their footsteps. If one leaves, then the other may try to dislodge them. If only one leaves, the other may try to dislodge them. And lastly, if there's only one extremist, he may cease communications with family members or even attack and kill other family members. There are a couple of examples of that, of ISIS fighters who killed their mothers in Raqqa and elsewhere. Next, please. So limitations of the study, the data set, there's incomplete information about the 118 cases. I did not do field research, and as we well know, that radicalization has multi-dimensional aspects, and it's just not one factor, although noting that family can be an important contributing factor to radicalization. Next, please. Then a colleague and I looked at some other cases, January 6, 2021, and at the time we looked at about 1,000 cases, and 17% of those people were prosecuted with another family member. We looked at 81 families and 90 family relationships, and the frequency of husbands and wives about 30%, parents and children 30, and siblings also near 30. Again, an important distinction between traditional terrorists and people that were involved with January 6th. In some cases, more radicalism than terrorism, of course, except for seditious conspiracy, those types of convictions that you had, of course. In January, you had the commutation and pardoning of all those actors. Next, please. A couple of examples, husbands and wives. The husband was a member of Oath Keepers and prosecuted, convicted of seditious conspiracy. Next, please. A father and son, both were police officers. The son was part of Proud Boys at the time. Next. Two brothers from Texas were involved January 6th, also prosecuted in relation to attacking, harming law enforcement. Next, please. Other examples, so you had a grandfather, several of his kids, and a minor getting involved, coming into the Capitol on January 6th. Again, you had a large variance in terms of convictions. Next, please. Similarly as well, you had a family from Texas, including husband, wife, kids, and a minor as well. Next. So to wrap up on family terror networks, in the future, you'll have a most likely continuation of this modality of this type of terrorism, most likely expanded adoption. You continue having challenges in discovery. Again, we need to take a whole of approach to society, as was mentioned before. And of course, the role of law enforcement is critical. Sort of forward-looking perspective is the U.S. government's 2025 designation of 8 DTOs, or organized criminal syndicates, in Mexico and Venezuela, El Salvador, raises the hybrid issue, organized criminal syndicate terrorism hybrid, as well as potential study for future youth family radicalization issues. Next, please. So looking at the Mafia Jihad study, which was very important and is important and innovative, again, looked at the roles of families in terror groups and organized criminal syndicates. And indeed, as was mentioned, the report more study is needed. The hybrids do exist, but in some cases, you have one feature predominates. And as was noted in the report, kids are targeted at different stages as well. And the principal goal of terrorism is political violence, primarily obtained through violence. In contrast, generally speaking, organized criminal syndicate principle financial gain enforced by violence. And one could argue the allegiance to organized criminal syndicate might be stronger than a terror group because the latter, its political goal. And that's more important than the terrorist group's existence, but not always. And both seek youth. You could argue the organized criminal syndicates do it for business continuity, and the terrorists do it to conduct attack. Next slide. I think it's the last slide. So lessons learned, as was noted in the Italian model, focusing on best interests of the children, non-arbitrariness in treatment and holistic approach. And the report made very important recommendations regarding a national strategy on CVE, the role of law, evidence-based responses, and ideologically agnostic approach. And next slide, I think it's the last. And that's it. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. If you're interested in the book, just send me an email, send you the PDF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Alexander, for your presentation, for your comments on the Mafia Jihad report study. I think it was very useful for us. You're sharing the evidence-based cases of family terror networks, especially raising the point of how difficult de-radicalization can be in this specific cases. And of course, I share with you the view of a need of a whole of a society approach when it comes to tackling these kinds of issues. So I'm happy now to open the floor to the questions. And as a matter of fact, I'm very happy that there was already one. So Professor Dean, I have a question for you. How do you think expansive online youth radicalization across an ideological spectra impacts family terror networks and familial influences in organized crimes syndicates?
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the expansive use of online radicalization is both complements and then competes with existing extremism or radical tenets within OCS and terror groups. Because on the one hand, you have breadth of different ideations that kids are exposed to online, from incel, different hate, antinatalists, different religiously motivated, nationalists, self-determination, etc. So on the one hand, you could argue that could compete with the ideation that's being, quote unquote, taught in the home. Again, you also need to differentiate between minors versus adults. It's possible as well through this dissemination of content that adults could be exposed to content that heretofore they weren't. Also, the exposure to the kids could be distinct or diametrically opposed to what the parents are teaching. In some cases, the parents may not be unaware, might be unaware that their kids are being radicalized. So that's another thing that we need to be aware of, their access to this extremist content through their phone and otherwise. So I think those are some of the points I wanted to share.
Thank you very much, Dean. Cecilia, I think you're here, so that's great. If you could again, please elaborate a little on the major findings of the project, what they reveal about the dynamics and what they are their main implications. I think this was the question that our colleague from the floor asked.
With pleasure, Filippo. Thank you, and thank you for your patience. Well, first of all, we found that the family unit serves as a vector of ideological transmission. The family, in fact, acts in its role as a primary locus of socialization, as a central environment shaping, in fact, children's values, perception, and identity formation processes. In both contexts, in particular, we found that the pedagogical function of the family is oriented toward the transmission, validation, and also the normalization of deviant behavioral codes, belief systems that leverage intra-family mechanism of trust, emotional validation, as well as groupthink dynamics that facilitate ideological acceptance as well as the behavioral conformity of all family members. And I'd like to bring an example of this, which is reported in the study that emerges from the testimony of mafia defector Emilio Di Giovane, who describes how, as a child, he was physically punished for revealing information about his uncles. This is also, of course, mirrored in the experience of children of radicalized parents who may promote violence not only as legitimate, but as an individual responsibility or even as a religious duty, and may seek to enforce children's compliance through psychological pressure or intimidation tactics. Within both extremist and mafia contexts, children are not merely exposed to violent ideologies or deprived of autonomy, but are truly systematically embedded within family structures that proactively shape and direct their mobilization for criminal or terror purposes. We understand, in fact, that blood ties catalyze the cooptation of these minors into violent ecosystems where childhood itself is fundamentally redefined in function of either the group or the family clan. The family itself, therefore, appear as offering unique opportunities to terrorism and organized crime. It serves as a privileged conduit for the transmission of extremist ideologies, antithetical values, and distorted worldviews. And by its very nature, the family unit constitutes an highly permeable environment to radicalization, with internal trust, in fact, facilitating the internalization of beliefs, whether these may be extremist or not, within the domestic environment, while also bringing an added value through the internal cohesion and loyalty that may exist within the family, which of course allows for the mobilization of operatives with reduced risks or exposure to detection, as well as external infiltration by law enforcement. So the potential for instrumentalization of the family clear has become evident to malign actors across both domains. Under ISIS, for instance, family were not merely understood as conduits for ideological transmissions, but as central units within a political territorial jihadist project under al-Baghdadi. And in the Italian organized crime syndicates, on the other hand, we found the family to be recognized as the primary and perhaps the most fundamental structure through which the mafia preserves and replicates itself. The family is understood not only as a developmental context or a pedagogical context, but as an exclusive horizon that encompasses the entirety of an individual's life trajectory, as well as a supreme value that demands unconditional loyalty and subordination of its members. Our research also offered insights into resilience and intervention opportunities, which I believe perhaps connected to what my colleague Tina was mentioning before. Children raised in ideologically driven environment are unlikely to develop an identity that diverges from that of the family. In fact, rendering the child's identity formation largely predetermined by the family nuclei and characterized at the same time by limited personal agency. Opinions which may be incompatible with the prevailing family worldview fatigue to penetrate the ideological barrier of the household. And doubt, dissent, or dissonant attitudes and behaviors are often repressed, punished, or silenced. However, in this regard, I would also like to note that not all children that are raised in ideologically saturated environment happen to fully internalize extremist or criminal precepts. And the quality of family relationships, the exposure that the children may afford to alternative perspectives, as well as the timeliness of the intervention and specific life events, including, for instance, parenthood itself, can serve as inflection points that either reinforce or disrupt the ideological transmission process. In addition, our study also found that the family role as either a risk or protective factor is not predetermined, but strictly context-dependent. Dysfunctional family environments, which are marked by paternal absence, socioeconomic struggle, marginalization, violence, or trauma, may drive youth towards extremism as a form of a compensatory identity formation, and this occurs irrespective of the parent's ideological orientation. Conversely, a cohesive family environment that relies on strong emotional bonds or that appears relatively stable is not inherently protective and may not and shall not be considered as such, because this type of family environment may further insulate the nuclei from external world or society and compound internal mechanisms of control and ideological reproduction. Lastly, I'd like also, of course, to raise a point about the experience examined by the study regarding Italy's judicial experience, with particular regards to the innovative approach developed by the Juvenile Court of Reggio Calabria and its demonstrated effectiveness in protecting children raised in criminal family environments. We found, in fact, while analyzing the judicial pathways of the Reggio Calabria court, truly an encouraging outlook for what it pertains the outcome of the suggested interventions, emphasizing the best interest of the child, early and preventive action, individualized case-by-case assessments, and multi-sectoral and coordinated approaches, as well as, of course, the active involvement of the family unit. Thank you, Filippo.
Thank you very much for your response, Cecilia. Professor Dean, I have a question for you from the floor. One of our participants is asking, in the study of cases where families have contributed to the radicalization, did you also find examples where family support made a difference in someone's journey away from extremism? This from the perspective of rehabilitation and reintegration of foreign terrorist fighters, where the family might be seen as the first unit to support vulnerable individuals to go back to normality.
Okay, that seemed to be two contradicting points, I think. What I took from the first part, are there instances where families try to intervene? Well, there are examples where people try to intervene. So in one case in the US where a mother discovered that her kid was interested in traveling abroad to join ISIS, and she took his passport from him. So he had to go and apply in person to get a new passport. And when he was asked why, the officer was suspicious, and then they did an investigation, found out that he was actually planning to join ISIS, and they prosecuted him. In another case in Saudi Arabia, you had two brothers. They wanted to travel to Syria and join ISIS. The parents did not allow that. They tried to intervene, so the kids killed the mother and tried to kill the father and brother. So I think that's in line with the first part of the question. And as to the second, I didn't really follow. It seemed to be a bit miscommunication.
No, I think that the question wanted to ask, how many times did you see in the study that family were supporting the returning fighters once they were trying to
come back? Yeah, there was one case where a woman went with her husband and several kids. Later on, she came back with the kids. The father was killed fighting in Syria or Iraq, I believe Syria. And then the mother was prosecuted for money laundering, was sentenced, but her sister ended up taking the kids, and they tried to rehabilitate them. So I have other case of a U.S. resident whose father was, I believe, a Yemeni embassy official. So she wanted to come back to the U.S. and she was not permitted to do so. Other case also in the U.K. where someone's based in Syria and want to come back and are not permitted to do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean. Cecilia, I have a very short, and maybe I would ask you to keep it as concise as possible, as we are almost running out of time. Of course, this study is Mafia Jihad, and it draws a lot on the Italian experience also in protecting children from organized crime, while at the same time trying to formulate broader recommendation for broadening the prevention of youth radicalization. Could you elaborate a little? I think it would be very useful for our participants. Could you elaborate on these two sets of insights and how these sets of insights can inform concrete measures and strategies to safeguard minors?
Thank you so much, Filippo. I would really like to spend a few words on the Italian model, so I'm really grateful for this inquiry. First and foremost, the Italian model, it's important in this context for a variety of reasons, and I'd like really to extrapolate some of the macro characteristic of this very articulate bulk of work that has been run by the Italian authorities. And first of all, the Italian model places the best interests of the child as the paramount consideration in all decision and interventions that concern the child in a particular case, even when this may in fact require a temporary separation from the family unit to prevent further exposure of the minor to deviant behaviors or ideologies, which in fact the Italian government recognized as harmful to the child well-being and development, as well as unconstitutional. Secondarily, I'd really like to specify that separation of the child from the family unit is strictly temporary and accompanied by comprehensive support systems that include social services, educational institutions, mental health professionals, and civil society organizations. And the aim here of the judicial authorities was to allow children infected to experience an alternative way of life, which is not only safe, but grounded in the rule of law and civic participation, which wouldn't have been possible if they remained in their current either territory or family nuclei. Third, interventions are grounded by a rigorous case-by-case assessment, which is based on a predetermined set of criteria regarding the risks to the child, as well as the capacity of the parent to fulfill their parental duties. And I think that this is particularly relevant even to youth radicalization context, given the sensitivity that surrounds potential disruption of the family unit and the assessment of ideological harm to the child, and also ensures that decisions are evidence-based and contextually appropriate. Furthermore, the model also emphasizes early intervention and preventive action to protect the children at risk before the harms has occurred. And it adopts a non-punitive stance towards family, in the sense that whenever possible, there is truly a willingness and an openness from the authorities to engage parents through remedial activities that include the parenting support programs, educational initiatives designed to dismantle their deviant pedagogical practices, as well as, of course, fostering cooperation across the family members. And this was very interesting because it was noted how mothers whose children were subjected to these type of interventions have identified the intervention itself as an opportunity not only to protect the minors from the predetermined criminal futures, but also as a chance to disengage themselves from criminal life. And so they have decided to cooperate with authority and also to afford rehabilitation and social integration opportunities that were provided. So truly the path happened conjunctly with the one of the mother. And lastly, of course, the model relies on an holistic and multi-sectoral approach that promotes coordination between not only the juvenile justice system, but also child protection services, educational institutions, mental health professionals, law enforcement, and civil society. And the coordination mechanisms were formalized through protocols and memoranda of understanding. And this was particularly relevant in that it enhanced the effectiveness of the interventions while preventing institutional overlaps and duplication. And I understand that now we have only a couple of minutes left, so I will not pass to cover the broader framework for preventing youth radicalization, but I would really like to invite all attendees to this webinar to read our study, of course, and to take a look at the recommendation set, because I truly believe that this is important to inform pathways to prevent the involvement of minors with terrorism and violent extremism, whether this occurs within family units or beyond that. And thank you very much, Filippo.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. I believe that this brings to an end of our concise, short, but very interesting presentation of our latest publication. I would like, first of all, to thank who made this project possible, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I would like to thank Cecilia, the other researchers, Sergio Nazzaro, and Dr. Help me, Cecilia.
Nicolas Cremin.
Nicolas Cremin, thank you very much. I would like to thank Professor Alexander for having been here today. And last but not least, of course, I would like to thank all those that found the time today to connect participate and ask questions to our guests. Again, let me stress how much we would like that you also not only downloaded the study, but share with us any kind of feedback that you may have. We would be happy to get back to you. And of course, keep following the work of the Siracusa International Institute, of Next Wave, of course, through our social media. Once again, thank you, Cecilia. Thank you, Dean. It was a pleasure having you virtually here in Siracusa. I hope to have you in presence soon. And thanks to everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.